Moving on to back to our agenda here. Next is our public comment. And what we're going to do is we'll do the in-person ones first, and then we'll go to the Zoom. So we have some wipes up here if you need them. If we can get that mic, is that mic turned on? Yes. A minute? Yeah. So we're going to ask on the participation to keep it to 2 minutes, and we'll remind you when it's getting close, and want to be mindful of everyone else's time. So we'll start off with, we'll invite President Heidi Matthews up with Sophia Anderson on deck. So these are the in-person.
Oh my goodness, I never go first. Good morning. My name is Heidi Matthews, a teacher serving as the president of the Utah Education Association. Let me just express again the gratitude for your work and your commitment to public education. You know, I've been president of the UEA for over 5 years now. And with absolute certainty, I can say I have never seen the level of concern among our educators about their safety and the uncertainty, frustration with directives and expectations, especially with how we create welcoming environments with our classrooms for all of our kids, especially those who are most vulnerable. And understand, as USBE, you play such an important role in supporting our teachers and our educators so that we can be the best possible we can be for our students. It's very difficult in light of the uncertainties with the virus and honestly, the climate that is really seeking to undermine the professional integrity of our educators. And I'm sure you're aware there is an organized effort to undermine public schools. We know the playbook: create some distrust, undermine punitive environments. And as the UEA, we are really seeking to help support our educators through this time, and we look to you as critical partners. With regards to the R277328, recognize there was 5.5 hours the other night on Tuesday to present a PowerPoint on the slide. 5.5 hours to define things, and I understand that it was quite a productive evening. Recognize that with our educators and our parents, how difficult that is going to be to not have any training on that rule to then be able to implement it. And lastly, I would like to share a statement that we had in regards to the US DOE complaint. We said, as UEA, it brings up valid and urgent concerns that the Utah law ties the hands of local school districts in protecting students, particularly those with disabilities who are at heightened risk of severe illness, by preventing them from safely accessing in-person education. We support changing Utah law to allow the medical experts of state and local health departments in conjunction with local school districts in keeping students and employees and schools open to safe and in-person learning. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Sophia Anderson with Jessica Fivish on deck. Sophia?
I don't know why we were put together, but she's not here. I'm Jessica Fivish. Is that okay?
You're there, so let's...
Yeah, okay. So I'm Jessica Fivash, a parent and executive director of Academic Integrity Movement. The Rule R277123 you're going to discuss today creates a hotline for the public to keep teachers accountable for implementing what we're now supposed to refer to as educational equity instead of CRT. Yet, to my knowledge, there's no similar methods of holding those rule makers accountable at the higher levels. If there's something like this I'm not aware of, I'd like to have an email about it, academicintegritymovement@gmail.com. I've been reading a lot of grammar-requested documents and learning a lot about who's running our education system in Utah. The USBE board seems to be controlled by and or working with the Superintendent Dixon, the staff, and the Access Advisory Group to draft and pass rules, regardless of the wishes of both parents and stakeholders. This access group is not made of parents or just any average parents. I personally worked with at least one of the current at-large members as a leader with Utah Education Association, and was, at my last checking, she was a state union director working here and in DC with NEA and other special interest groups. As a parent, advocate, and watchdog, I'm curious as to why it appears You've kept your hands clean and passed an underwhelming rule into educational law while throwing under the bus those who are most important to our children at school. The Access Advisory Committee, which is
30
made of
30
racial
seconds.
identity, except for Caucasian, that is, which is actually odd when this is the vast majority of students in Utah. And the superintendent are obviously complicit, and it looks to me like almost all of the state board members are as well. Looking over your previous voting records, it's pretty clear most of you are going along to get along, for whatever your reason, but you are nonetheless. Let's remember whom it is that you serve, and it shouldn't be just yourselves. Parents, students, and teachers deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Jessica. What? Oh, that was, sorry. Okay, Monica Wilbur.
Good morning. The USBE pursuant to State Code 53G8202 states that academic success depends on access to an educational environment that is free from unnecessary disruption, discrimination, and harassment. It sure does. So why did the USBE form a racial and sexual identity group named Access to promote racially discriminatory, critical race-based approaches in the schools? In July 2020, Holly Bell, USBE staff member, spoke to Access and Superintendent Dixon about producing educational training that will, quote, cover the basic vocabulary of discrimination, microaggressions, implicit bias, intersectionality, systems of repression, etc., end quote. In other words, the board is actively promoting that politicized racial identity ideas and approaches be embraced in schools. This directly defies State Code 53G10402, which forbids political doctrines be taught in public schools. The board continues to discriminate in its gender equity draft proposal, which states that school staff should consult with a gender dysphoric student before reaching out to the student's legal guardian. This recommendation directly defies the mandate given the state board to, quote, respect, protect, and further the interests of parents in their children's public education, and to promote and encourage parents' full and active participation per Utah Code 53E2201. You are compelling attitudes and speech on racial
30
and
seconds.
gender issues and failing to create politically neutral school environments. And you're failing our children in the process. As a parent, I'm watching this happen in real time in my kids' classrooms, and I'm not the only parent with receipts. The board dangerously oversteps its statutory authority. Recently, other school boards have lost legal battles after trying to compel politicized speech or thought. Our children deserve an educational leadership model that doesn't unnecessarily disrupt learning in a quixotic obsession to entrench racial and sexual identity politics in schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Bernadette Brockman with Becky Hope on deck. Bernadette.
Good morning. My name is Bernadette Brockman, mother of two and director of operations with AIM. As a parent, I'm concerned about where you're getting your guidance from and the guidance you put out. I'm concerned about the manipulation and abuse of power, as well as an agenda that is being pushed down from the top and through Access. Documents obtained through Gamma requests revealed some telling information. In the December 12, 2020 minutes, Vice Chair Yazzie states that it's just the education part of it that needs to be done, and thinks that it is one of the biggest issues that we have at USBE and different places throughout the state. Ms. Bell states that is why we are going to start with vocabulary, the basics. What is bias, systemic racism, white privilege, microaggressions, equity versus equality? We can't overload them, USBE, because there are so many terminologies. That's why we need them to understand these basic principles: equity and systemic oppression. Mr. Thompson states that we do leadership summits, bring youth to the Capitol, hold summits for them, and try to empower our youth to help them become activists in their communities. Activists? Are you serious? Code 53G-8-202. The USBE recognizes that academic success depends on access to an educational environment that is safe, conducive to the learning process, and free from unnecessary disruption, discrimination, and harassment. The agenda being pushed down to the schools is nothing more than harassment and discrimination. You have Access board members like Ms. Bell speaking to other board members, singling out Natalie Klein for asking questions. Ms. Bell believes that Natalie is a challenge to work with, and if you want to get an idea of the board that you'll be working with, visit the recording. Take a visit to the Facebook page because it's all there. If you see what Natalie has posted, that is going to give you a good sense of where she stands, and she's going to be a loud voice. The level of hypocrisy is amazing. Do you speak for Natalie? Or do you talk about Natalie? You single out and harass members of the board, but you want parents to trust the decisions you make for their children? To the USBE, do you not know you're being manipulated by Access? Sydney Dickinson, Deputy Superintendent Norman, and others, do you not know, or do you know and not care? I ask you, is it acceptable for Access members to single out Natalie Klein? Does this destructive agenda mean more than the safety and well-being of our children? If you answered yes to any of those questions, then you should find another job.
Okay, Becky Hope with Melissa Moore on deck.
Morning. My name is Becky Hope, and I'm a mother of 4 children in public school, 4 children, and they are my priority, so I'm here for the children. I'm also the outreach director for AIM, Academic Integrity Movement, and I wanted to address the draft that will be for review tomorrow, titled Understanding Gender Identity to Better Support Students. Some of the definitions of terms in this that are made up by someone, I guess, include the following. Biological sex refers to an infant's sex as determined or assigned based on the external reproductive organs. Gender identity relates to a person's internal sense of being male, female, some combination of male and female, or neither male nor female. Gender binary is a classification system consisting of 2 genders, girl-boy and man-woman. It also states school staff should consult with the student before reaching out to the student's legal parents or guardians. Sometimes students have not revealed their transgender or non-binary identity to their families. There may be safety concerns for the student and fear of rejection. Under these circumstances, the student's parents or guardians should not be contacted. Lying to the parents is an utterly unsustainable solution. In truth, a gender support plan is obviously not about protecting the kids. It's about building a blockade against parental oversight while gender activists indoctrinate the child. How about instead the board enacts a policy on gender dysphoria considering the following points? Immediately alert a child's parents of any request from the child or peers to call a student by pronouns that do not align with their biological sex and or any name other than their legal name, not asking children their preferred pronouns, but address all children by their biologically based pronouns, remove all gender ideology from the curriculum and all classrooms, remove any gender ideology marketing material that may have been distributed or displayed by GSA. You need to end making the sexual identity of our children and their skin color the focus of their public education. Please do not support the continued sexualization of minors in public education. Thank you.
Melissa Moore with Jeremy Burchard on deck. Melissa? Is there, Melissa, are you in the back, or Melissa Moore? Okay. Jeremy? And then Mike Tyler, you're on deck.
Okay. Hello, I'm a parent of children in the Davis School District. I'm here to speak to you about COVID vaccines for children. I know it's not on the agenda, but I probably eventually will be in front of this board at some point. Some data. From the start of the COVID outbreak in the U.S., 476 children aged 0 to 17 have been recorded as dying of COVID. This comes straight from the CDC's own data. The U.S. population of 0 to 17-year-olds in the United States is approximately 74 million. Thus, the childhood death rate for COVID in the U.S. is 0.00064%. This is statistically zero. The leading cause of death in children in this age group is car accidents. 6 times as many children died in car accidents in 2019 as died of COVID in the last 1.5 years. Over 4 times as many children died of cancer, 3 times as many suffocated, twice as many drowned, and twice as many were accidentally poisoned. In fact, children literally have a greater chance of being struck by lightning than dying of COVID. 95% of all COVID deaths in the U.S. have been people over 50 years of age, all of them having, on average, 3 to 4 pre-existing health issues, such as flu, pneumonia, diabetes, etc. The average age of a COVID death is over 70 years old. So let me be clear. There is no logical, statistical, scientific, or medical justification to consider vaccinating children for COVID. The COVID vaccines are still under emergency use authorization, and hundreds of thousands of adverse reactions have now been recorded in the VAERS database, and that's growing, including several thousand deaths. Those that have been vaccinated are still getting and spreading the virus. Long-term side effects are completely unknown at this point. We now have dozens of respected doctors and scientists and researchers, even Nobel laureates, now cautioning us, telling us to stop, reconsider the vaccines, do not even issue them during a pandemic, and absolutely do not administer them to children. Even if the COVID vaccines were tested over decades and proven to be safe and effective, there would still be no medical justification to administer them to children. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you. Thank you.
Mike Tyler, we didn't have him confirmed on Zoom, so we're assuming Mike Tyler. Okay, we'll go to our Zoom part of it. We have Genevra Prothero is on Zoom, I believe, with Brooke. Stephens, you're on deck.
Yeah, so this is Genevra Prothero. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So good morning. So my name is Genevra Prothero, as I mentioned, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I support the draft for understanding gender identities, and thank you for using scientific studies when creating this draft. However, please do not require parents to sign an approval because there are too many students that would not be safe at home if this was a requirement to respect pronouns or how a student prefers to be addressed. As a mother in Davis County of a cisgender son that is a student in Davis School District and goes by he, him, his pronouns, I'm trying to teach him about love and respect. The suicide rate among our youth is too high, especially within the LGBTQIA+ community. Gender identity refers to a person's clear sense of their own gender. This is not something which is governed by a person's physical attributes. Gender expression is how you express yourself, and just like the rest of society, non-binary people have all sorts of ways to express themselves and their identity.
1 minute. Just 1 minute. I'll give you a 30-second too, as a
courtesy. Can present. Thank you. They can present as masculine, feminine, and or in any way that this can change, and this can change over time. But none of these expressions make their identity any less valid or worthy of respect. Not everyone necessarily uses he or she pronouns, and it's important to be respectful of all people, including our students who use different pronouns. The most common gender-neutral pronoun is the singular they, them, theirs. Using people's correct pronouns shows that you respect them for who they are. At University of Utah Health Services for Transgender Teens and Youth, you can find frequently asked questions. Here is one of them. Where can I find information about the university's non-discrimination policy or report a concern? Answer, gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation are protected classes under university policies. If you feel as though you may have been discriminated.
Can you sum up? Your 2 minutes is up.
Yes, you can just look that up online. And then USBE needs to adopt a similar policy as U of U. Our children should get to decide who they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Brooke Stephens, and then Erwin Brewer is on deck. And I don't know if it's helpful to interrupt at a 1 minute mark, but I'll give a 30-second heads up to help you.
Okay, thank you. I'm the mother of 4 kids, and I'm wondering if any of us truly comprehend the complexities past, present, and future of students suffering from gender dysphoria. There are hundreds, possibly thousands of detransitioners across the country who have regrets and are starting to file lawsuits. One of the more recent lawsuits being DH et al. Versus Jamie Snyder. The transgendered trend has been growing by 2,000%. So it's just a matter of time before lawsuits from detransitioners start growing as well. Studies have shown that affirmation leads to hormone blockers, which leads to surgeries. Medical transitioning is a dangerous and harmful practice for youth who are still growing, developing, maturing, and learning who they are. Affirmation through pronouns will put teachers and schools at risk of future lawsuits. If a school teacher or administrator cannot have enough compassion on a person with a headache to give them an aspirin due to possible legal problems, how can putting students in the pipeline toward medical transitioning not be seen as a greater offense? We can love and protect all youth in a multitude of ways. Teachers can be respectful and compassionate without asking the whole class for their pronouns. A simple solution is for schools to put the pronouns on the class lists after a change by the parents on the permanent file. So teachers already know from the first day how to address their students. I have reviewed the gender identity draft document. It states that it respects parental rights while at the same time suggesting ideas for getting around state law. I would like to encourage the USBE to write a policy that is clear and cannot be interpreted as a vehicle of duplicitous
30
intent.
seconds.
When the USBE creates a policy that goes against the law, the teachers are the ones getting caught in the crossfire. Look at where we are now. Please honor your teachers, your students, and your parents with a clear and solid policy that upholds the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Erwin Brewer with Joan Landis on deck.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is actually Erwin Brewer. It's interesting because when I was in hunter safety class, they called me Erwin because they were shocked that a girl would actually be in the class. I wanted to tell you the story of my gender dysphoria. I would have been considered a transgender child today. Thankfully, the teacher at Howard R. Driggs Elementary School, Ms. Hicken, referred me to the school psychologist who did a full assessment on me. Thankfully, she did not affirm me. She did not affirm the self-hatred and the shame that I had, and she did not affirm my no longer wanting to identify as a little girl. She did not affirm me dissociating from myself to become a boy. And thankfully, she did not do this because my desire to be a boy was the result of a serious sexual assault that occurred between kindergarten and first grade. If she had affirmed me, she would have affirmed that sense that I was inherently flawed because of that sexual assault instead of getting me the help that I needed so desperately. There are lots of different causes of gender dysphoria and gender confusion among children, sexual assault being one of them. Another are children who are gender nonconforming. Some of these kids who are gay and lesbian are being told that they're actually transgender because they're not adhering to regressive gender stereotypes. Gender dysphoria can be a social contagion and also caused by puberty. We all know how uncomfortable it is to go through puberty, and many of these kids are told if they're uncomfortable developing into the male or female that they are, that in fact they're transgender, and this is a lie. Affirming a child is incredibly dangerous. A lot of people think socially transitioning or allowing a child to use alternative name and pronouns is benign. In fact, it is dangerous. If I had been affirmed, it would have put me at risk at additional sexual assault, as I would have been going into showers and locker rooms and bathrooms with
30
men.
seconds.
It would have reinforced the shame that I had, and it would have denied me the opportunity to get the help that I needed to resolve the sexual assault. There is good research that shows that up to 98% of children with gender dysphoria will have that resolved if they're allowed to naturally go through puberty. By reaffirming this gender identity politics, we're not allowing them to go through the natural process that actually cures the gender dysphoria. There are no trans children. There are only children with gender confusion and gender dysphoria, and they deserve to get help, not to be pushed into a dangerous medical experimental pathway that's going to cause lifelong medical interventions, sterilization, and damage to their otherwise healthy body. I ask that you consider this when you look at developing policies and realize that gender identity issues are related to underlying causes and not related to somebody inherently being born in the wrong body. Thank you for your time.
Next, we'll have Joan Landis with Joel Thornton on deck.
Ladies and gentlemen, I love to say that because there are two sexes. For excellence in education, mental health, and emotional safety, it requires the embracing of reality, not embracing fantasy, or even worse, embracing delusion. If we have an anorexic child, we do not affirm her and say that she needs to go on a diet and get liposuction. If we have someone's body dysmorphia, we had a client I heard of that identified as blind. And so after a period of years, what did she do? She had chemicals put in her eyes to become blinded. And suicidality is not affirmed. These processes of thinking that are a problem should not be affirmed. They are not based in healthy reality. And schools and institutions have an obligation not to affirm things that are not reality. Something that you may not be aware of is that there's also a transracial identity coming down the pipe and trans species. In some schools, children identify as cats and they will park in areas of the room and spit and claw, and the teachers can do nothing because this type of Pandora's box, which we are opening with the transgender policy, ties the hands of teachers and administrators to adhere to reality. It creates chaos. You cannot have good education with this. It also creates great unsafety. There's nothing more unsafe for a child not to know what's going to happen at school. Is my friend going to be a boy or a girl today? Am I going to be a boy or a girl?
30 seconds. 30.
The other thing that you need to understand is that it is often a cover for kids who don't accept the fact that they are lesbian or gay. Transgenderism is the worst sort of conversion therapy for being gay. If a lesbian doesn't want to have sex with a chick dick with a scrotum, that lesbian is now guilty of bullying and harassing the biological boy presenting as a girl. Also, to have an institution affirm this puts parents at a great disadvantage. One of the parents I work with.
Joan, your time's up. Can you sum your comments up, please?
Yes, when she doesn't affirm, her child reports her to CPS. I want you to really consider the ramifications. This is not just to people with pink hair. Thank you very much.
Joel, now we'll have Joel Thornton with Laurel Fitzer on deck. Joel?
Thank you. I'm Joel Thornton, and I'm an attorney with Child and Parental Rights Campaign. We're a public interest law firm that handles cases representing parents and parental rights, particularly in the school environment and particularly in the transgender area. And I wanted to address the board today on this Understanding Gender Identity to Better Support Students policy that's been drafted. And I want to point out only three things, so I won't take much time. On page 2, the second paragraph, this paragraph is the paragraph that allows for teachers not to talk to parents when students identify. And that paragraph violates Utah law, as has been pointed out on several occasions today. Also on page 5, when we get to federal protections to know, this policy misstates federal law when it talks about Title IX. Title IX does not include sexual orientation and gender identity. Title VII includes that according to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court of the United States has not ruled on that issue. And so it's inappropriate and it's not inappropriate, it's a misstatement of law to say that Title IX also includes gender identity and sexual orientation. So you need to be considering that as well. And then finally, on page 6, right above the further readings and available resources, the statement that school staff refer to the use of students' preferred pronouns must be
Joel, 30
followed.
seconds.
That idea violates the constitutional rights of teachers who don't shed their constitutional rights according to the Tinker case at the schoolhouse gates. So it's important as the board's drafting this policy, that they draft a policy that respects the rights of all the students and all the parents in the community. And we're happy to be a resource to work with the board to do that. Thank you.
Next, we'll have Laurel Fitzer.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just can't see you. I'm speaking about the understanding gender identity that will be discussed tomorrow. Some people have claimed that medical transition reduces the risk of trans-identified individuals and that they will commit suicide, that those individuals will commit suicide. A study in Sweden conducted in the LGBT affirming community found that transitioning does not prevent suicide. This study showed that 10 years post-transition surgery, there was a 5 times more likely attempt of suicide and 19 more likely to commit suicide. The suicide of anyone, especially a young person, is tragic. There is no evidence that using puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, or surgeries prevent suicides. More research shows that those who go through with gender reassignment surgeries are 19 times more likely to commit suicide. Using cross-sex hormones have shown to increase anxiety levels and increase depression when used over 1 year. Many studies show that there is a need for mental health interventions. Children with gender dysphoria often have depression, anorexia, and other psychological conditions that predispose them to suicide. Transition does not relieve these underlying conditions, but masks them. There are things that can help: talk therapy, some psychiatric medications, nutrition, exercise, family therapy are more helpful.
30 seconds.
Many trans-identified people eventually discover transitioning doesn't resolve the distress they feel in their bodies. Any policy should encourage the use of psychotherapy to help young people explore and resolve underlying causes of the psychological rejection of their body and avoid a lifetime of expensive, radical, painful, sterilizing, dangerous, and potentially deadly interventions. Thank you.
Thank you. We had 3 that signed up that didn't participate. I'll do one additional call out. Mike Tyler. I'm not sure if that was Zoom or not. Mike Tyler. Okay. Melissa Moore, which was an in-person. Sophia Anderson. Okay. Well, this concludes our public comment portion of our meeting. Board members, at this time, we're going to take about a 7-minute break. We're going to get started promptly with our work with Utah Schools for the Deaf and Blind at 20 after. So I'll ask, and by the way, we have everyone attending today as far as board members. Vice Chair Belknap is joining us remotely, and I have Vice Chair Davis, Plan B here, and will be participating in part of the chairing today. So thank you for taking the assignment. So 20 after, we're going to promptly